Hello friends, welcome to Book Bites. Today we'll talk about The Whole Brain Child book by Daniel J. Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson. The Whole Brain Child, 12 Revolutionary Strategies to Nurture Your Child's Developing Mind by Daniel J. Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson offers an insightful approach to understanding how children's brains develop and how parents can use this knowledge to help their children thrive emotionally, socially and cognitively. The book is based on the latest research in neuroscience and child development, making it a highly practical resource for parents, caregivers and educators looking to support the mental and emotional well-being of children. The main premise of The Whole Brain Child is that a child's brain is not fully developed, and as a result, their emotional and cognitive responses can sometimes be unpredictable and difficult to manage. Siegel and Bryson explain how parents can engage with their children in ways that foster healthy brain development, leading to better emotional regulation, greater empathy, and improved problem-solving skills. One of the key concepts of the book is that children's brains are made up of two main hemispheres: the left hemisphere, which is responsible for logic and reasoning, and the right hemisphere, which is more emotional and intuitive. In addition, the book highlights the importance of the downstairs brain, which is responsible for basic survival instincts and emotional responses, and the upstairs brain, which is responsible for higher-order thinking, such as planning, self-regulation and decision-making. Siegel and Bryson emphasize the importance of integrating these different brain regions to help children develop a balanced and functional brain. Through 12 strategies, the book offers practical techniques that parents can apply to their everyday interactions with their children to promote healthy brain development and emotional well-being. These strategies not only help children cope with their emotions, but also help parents become more effective in handling difficult behaviors and guiding their children through challenging moments. Now let's break down the key concepts of the book, focusing on each of the 12 strategies that Siegel and Bryson present for nurturing a child's developing brain. Each point will explore a different approach and provide practical advice on how to implement these techniques in daily parenting. Let's explore the main concepts, point by point. Point 1. Connect and redirect, engaging both sides of the brain. One of the foundational strategies in The Whole Brain Child is connect and redirect. This principle is deeply rooted in brain science and teaches parents how to respond more effectively when their child is emotionally overwhelmed or acting out. It emphasizes a two-step process: first connecting with the child emotionally, right brain, and then redirecting with logic and reason, left brain. Understanding this approach allows parents to help their children move from chaos to calm in a way that nurtures emotional and cognitive development. When a child is upset, especially during a tantrum or meltdown, their right brain responsible for emotions, nonverbal communication, and intuition is in control. At that moment, they are unable to process rational explanations or instructions. Trying to lecture them, reason with them, or demand behavior correction only worsens the situation because their left brain responsible for logic, language, and reasoning is essentially offline. This mismatch often leads to frustration on both sides. The first step, connect, involves joining the child in their emotional world. It's about validating their feelings and showing empathy even if the behavior seems unreasonable. Simple statements like, "I can see you're really upset," or "that must feel really hard," help the child feel seen and understood. Non-verbal cues like a calm tone, gentle touch, and eye contact also reinforce this emotional connection. This step soothes the child's emotional brain and signals safety and support. Once the emotional storm has passed and the child begins to calm down, the second step is redirect. Now that the child's left brain is more accessible, you can guide them through problem-solving, reasoning, or setting boundaries. At this point, the child is more likely to listen, understand consequences, and engage with logical discussion. You can help them think through what happened, why it was inappropriate, and what to do differently next time. For example, imagine a 4-year-old who is furious because they can't have a cookie before dinner. Instead of saying, "Stop crying, you know the rule," a parent using the connect and redirect method would kneel down and say, "I know you're really sad and mad because you want that cookie. I get it, it looks yummy, and you're hungry." That's connection. Then, after a moment, the parent might add, "Dinner is almost ready. After you eat, you can definitely have a cookie. Do you want to help me set the table while we wait?" That's redirection. This strategy teaches children that their emotions are valid and manageable. Over time, it also models emotional regulation and effective communication. It allows children to understand that while they may not always get what they want, they are always supported and guided through their experiences with love and respect. Moreover, this method builds integration between the left and right hemispheres of the brain, a key concept in the book. When children experience this kind of balanced interaction, their brains develop stronger neural pathways between the emotional and logical centers. This integration helps them become more self-aware, better at managing stress, and more equipped to handle challenges independently as they grow. In the long term, Connect and Redirect fosters not only emotional intelligence but also deepens the parent-child relationship. Children learn that their caregivers are safe, empathetic, and responsive even during emotionally intense moments. They feel secure enough to express their feelings, and they become more receptive to guidance and discipline. In summary, Connect and Redirect is a powerful brain-based parenting tool. It helps parents turn emotionally charged moments into opportunities for connection, learning, and growth. By engaging both sides of the brain, first soothing the right, then activating the left, parents can help their children develop emotional resilience, cognitive strength, and a deeper trust in their relationships. Point 2. Name it to tame it, helping your child label their emotions. One of the most effective techniques introduced in the Whole Brain Child is the strategy called Name It to Tame It. This concept is based on the idea that when children are overwhelmed by big emotions, fear, anger, sadness, they often struggle to express what they're feeling. These emotions can take over, leaving them feeling helpless, confused, or out of control. Name It to Tame It teaches parents how to help children regain control by putting their feelings into words. The brain is deeply influenced by how we process and narrate our experiences. When children encounter something distressing, a scary fall, a conflict with a friend, or an embarrassing moment, the memory is first stored in the right side of the brain. This side is emotional, visual, and sensory. But without the support of the left brain, which handles logic, language, and sequencing, the child can feel stuck in the emotional part of the experience. That's where the strategy of naming the emotion comes in. By encouraging your child to tell the story of what happened, or by helping them describe it with your guidance, you activate their left brain and begin to bring balance to the experience. This integration between the two hemispheres helps the child move from being overwhelmed to being in control. Here's how it works in practice. Imagine a child who comes home from school angry and withdrawn. Instead of immediately trying to fix things, or saying, "Don't worry, you'll be fine," a parent can sit down, gently encourage the child to share, and say something like, "You seem upset. Can you tell me what happened?" Or if the child is too overwhelmed to speak, the parent can offer words. "Did something happen at school that made you feel embarrassed or left out?" As the child begins to name the feelings, "I was embarrassed because everyone laughed when I spilled my lunch," they are unknowingly calming their emotional brain. This is because language gives form to feelings, and when we can label what we're going through, we start to feel more in control of it. Research in neuroscience supports this. Simply labeling an emotion reduces activity in the brain's amygdala, the region responsible for processing fear and emotional reactivity. But this strategy isn't just about emotional emergencies. It's also helpful in daily parenting situations like transitions, disappointments, or sibling conflicts. If a child is frustrated about losing a game, a parent might say, "I can see you're feeling really disappointed because you wanted to win." If a child is afraid to sleep alone, the parent could say, "It sounds like you're scared to be by yourself right now. That's okay. We all feel that way sometimes." It's important not to rush or dismiss emotions by saying things like, "It's not a big deal," or "You're overreacting." These responses invalidate the child's experience and can make them feel even more isolated or misunderstood. Instead, by naming and validating the emotion, you help your child build emotional literacy, the ability to recognize, understand, and manage feelings. As children grow, this practice of labeling emotions becomes a powerful tool for self-regulation. Over time, they internalize the habit of asking themselves, "What am I feeling right now, and why am I feeling this way?" This introspective skill is a cornerstone of emotional intelligence, which is strongly linked to success in relationships, academics, and even future careers. Name It to Tame It also strengthens the bond between parent and child. It sends the message that their emotions are welcome and manageable, not something to hide or be ashamed of. This builds trust and open communication, creating a home environment where children feel safe expressing their inner world. Additionally, storytelling can play a big role in this strategy. The authors suggest helping children create a coherent narrative around difficult or confusing events. For example, if a child has been in an accident, helping them talk through the event repeatedly in a calm, supportive way allows them to process the memory and reduce its emotional charge. This approach is not just useful for children, it's a strategy adults can use as well. In conclusion, Name It to Tame It is a simple yet profound tool that empowers children to understand and regulate their emotions. By labeling feelings and telling their stories, children move from emotional chaos to clarity. This integration between emotional experience and logical understanding not only calms the child in the moment, but also equips them with lifelong skills for emotional awareness and resilience. Point 3. Engage, don't enrage, appealing to the upstairs brain. One of the most powerful ideas in the whole brain child is the distinction between the upstairs brain and the downstairs brain. Understanding this concept can completely change the way parents approach discipline, decision-making, and conflict with their children. This third strategy, called engage, don't enrage, teaches us how to speak to the logical, thoughtful part of the brain rather than triggering the reactive, emotional part. Let's break it down. The downstairs brain is responsible for our most basic functions, instincts, strong emotions, and survival responses like fight, flight, or freeze. It includes areas like the amygdala, which processes fear and aggression. This part of the brain is fully developed at birth because it's essential for survival. It kicks in when your child is in danger, or even when they just feel threatened emotionally. On the other hand, the upstairs brain, the home of logic, empathy, planning, self-regulation, and moral reasoning, develops slowly and is not fully mature until the mid-20s. This means that children and even teenagers are often functioning from their downstairs brain, especially during moments of stress, anger, or fear. When a child feels cornered, criticized, or out of control, their upstairs brain goes offline, and they become reactive. This is when yelling, defiance, tantrums, or shutting down can happen. Unfortunately, many typical parenting responses like scolding, threatening, or punishing trigger the downstairs brain even more. This approach may enforce short-term obedience, but damages long-term learning and connection. The solution, as the authors suggest, is to engage, don't enrage. In other words, when your child is acting out, your goal should be to engage their upstairs brain rather than escalate their emotional response. You do this by staying calm, using empathy, asking thoughtful questions, and inviting them into problem-solving rather than forcing compliance. Let's consider an example. Suppose your child refuses to clean their room and yells, "You can't make me." A common reaction might be to say, "Don't you dare talk to me like that. Clean your room right now, or you'll lose your TV time." This approach engages the child's downstairs brain, making them feel attacked and more likely to fight back or shut down. Instead, using engage, don't enrage, a parent might say, "I can tell you're really frustrated. Can you help me understand what's going on?" Or, "I know cleaning your room isn't fun, but let's figure out a way to get it done together. What part do you want to start with?" These types of responses engage the upstairs brain by encouraging cooperation, reasoning, and emotional awareness. They show your child that you're on their side and that they're capable of making better choices. Over time, these respectful interactions train the child's brain to pause, reflect, and act thoughtfully, even in challenging moments. It's important to note that engaging the upstairs brain doesn't mean letting go of boundaries or consequences. In fact, setting clear, consistent limits is a crucial part of helping children develop their upstairs brain. But how you communicate those limits makes all the difference. A calm, curious, and respectful tone keeps the upstairs brain online. A threatening, angry, or dismissive tone shuts it down. Another practical tool mentioned in the book is asking, not telling. Instead of issuing commands like, "Put your shoes on now," you might ask, "What do you need to do so we can leave on time?" This subtle shift invites cooperation and keeps the child's thinking brain engaged. You can also use what the authors call meaningful choices. Giving your child some control helps prevent power struggles. For example, do you want to brush your teeth first or put on pajamas first? Both choices meet your goal, but the child feels empowered to decide. In the long term, regularly engaging your child's upstairs brain strengthens it. They become better at handling frustration, making decisions, managing conflict, and understanding others' perspectives. You're not just avoiding a tantrum in the moment, you're building their brain for a lifetime of emotional and social competence. In conclusion, engage, don't enrage reminds us that discipline isn't about control, it's about teaching. When we reach for connection and calm rather than anger and authority, we guide our children toward their best selves. We show them how to use their upstairs brain, even when life feels overwhelming. Point 4. Use it or lose it. Strengthening the upstairs brain through practice. One of the key insights from the whole brain child is the understanding that the brain functions like a muscle. The more we use certain parts of it, the stronger and more capable those areas become. This concept is captured in the strategy called use it or lose it. It emphasizes the importance of giving children frequent opportunities to practice using their upstairs brain, the part responsible for decision-making, planning, empathy, and emotional regulation, so that it becomes stronger over time. The upstairs brain, which includes the prefrontal cortex, is responsible for many higher-order functions like sound judgment, emotional balance, self-understanding, and morality. But because this part of the brain isn't fully developed in children, it's our responsibility as parents and caregivers to help them exercise and strengthen it. Just like a muscle, the more it's used, the better it functions. The idea behind Use It or Lose It is to encourage kids to think critically, make choices, reflect on their actions, and solve problems. These activities help build connections in the upstairs brain and prepare children to handle life's challenges with more clarity and calmness. For instance, instead of solving every problem for your child, invite them to participate in the process. If two siblings are arguing over a toy, rather than jumping in with a quick solution, ask them, "How do you think we can solve this so that it's fair for both of you?" This not only shifts their focus from reactivity to reflection, but also encourages empathy, negotiation, and compromise. Or consider a situation where a child makes a mistake, like forgetting to bring their homework. Instead of scolding them, try saying, "What do you think happened, and how could you make sure it doesn't happen again?" This helps the child move from shame to problem solving, activating their thinking brain in a constructive way. Another great way to build the upstairs brain is through decision-making opportunities. Let your child make age-appropriate choices in everyday life, choosing their outfit, planning the weekend activity, or deciding what book to read before bed. When children are involved in decision-making, they practice evaluating options, anticipating outcomes, and taking responsibility skills that are vital for life. Storytelling and role-playing also offer powerful brain exercises. You can create scenarios with your child and ask, "What would you do if someone at school said something mean to you?" Or "How do you think your friend felt when you didn't share your toy?" These types of conversations stimulate both empathy and problem-solving, making the upstairs brain more agile and responsive. It's also helpful to talk openly about emotions and values in a calm setting, not just during emotional meltdowns. This builds emotional vocabulary and moral reasoning. For example, after watching a movie together, you might discuss the characters' decisions and ask your child how they would have handled the same situation. These reflections turn ordinary moments into meaningful brain-building opportunities. Use It or Lose It also applies to self-awareness and mindfulness. Helping children notice their own feelings and thoughts gives them a sense of control over their reactions. Simple mindfulness practices, like breathing deeply when upset or pausing before speaking, help wire the brain for calm responses rather than impulsive ones. Remember, this isn't about expecting perfection. Your child will make mistakes, and that's okay. The goal isn't to raise a robot who always does the right thing. It's to raise a child who learns from experiences and grows stronger through reflection. With consistent support and guidance, your child's upstairs brain will become more reliable and resilient. In short, Use It or Lose It means giving children the space, support, and encouragement to practice their thinking, reasoning, and empathy skills regularly. Just like we exercise our bodies to stay strong and flexible, we can help children exercise their brains through meaningful conversations, decision-making, storytelling, and emotional reflection. Over time, this practice leads to a well-integrated brain where both emotional and logical parts work together harmoniously. Your child learns to pause, think, and respond wisely, even in difficult situations. And that's one of the greatest gifts you can offer them: a brain built for resilience, empathy, and lifelong success. Point 5. Move It or Lose It, using the body to shift emotional states. One of the most fascinating and practical strategies in the whole brain child is the concept of move it or lose it. This idea highlights the powerful connection between the body and the brain, showing that physical movement can be a direct and effective tool for emotional regulation. When children experience intense emotions, whether it's anger, fear, frustration, or sadness, they often become overwhelmed and unable to think clearly. Their downstairs brain takes over, triggering reactive behaviors like yelling, crying, or shutting down. In these moments, trying to reason with your child often doesn't work because their upstairs brain, the part responsible for logic and control, is essentially offline. That's where movement comes in. Research has shown that physical activity can help shift a child out of a reactive emotional state and back into a calmer, more balanced one. Exercise increases blood flow and releases neurochemicals like dopamine and endorphins, which help regulate mood and stress. In simple terms, moving the body helps reset the brain. So instead of saying calm down when a child is upset, which rarely works, the strategy move it or lose it suggests encouraging some kind of movement: walking, dancing, jumping, stretching, or even just taking a few deep breaths. This gives the child a chance to discharge some of the emotional energy and come back to a state where they can actually listen, think, and respond calmly. Let's look at an example. De faach men esi hazay sune hislam mabo. Imagine your child is melting down because they lost a game or can't get something they want. Their emotions are running high, and nothing you say seems to reach them. Instead of insisting they use their words or stop crying, try saying, "Let's go take a walk outside," or "Do you want to jump up and down with me for a minute?" This simple act of moving helps regulate their nervous system and can lead to a noticeable shift in their mood. This principle is especially effective with younger children who often can't yet express their feelings in words. Movement becomes their language, a way to release tension and regain control. Move it or lose it isn't just for big emotional meltdowns. It's also a proactive tool to build emotional resilience over time. Regular physical activity improves mental well-being and helps children manage everyday stress more effectively. It can be anything from riding a bike to playing tag, dancing in the living room, or doing yoga poses. What makes this strategy so unique is that it doesn't rely on talking. While verbal problem solving is important, it often fails in high-stress moments. Movement offers a non-verbal immediate intervention that brings the brain and body into alignment. As a parent or caregiver, you can use this approach for yourself too. When you feel overwhelmed or triggered, take a walk, stretch, or shake out your hands. Children learn best by example, and seeing you regulate your own emotions through physical movement teaches them powerful coping tools. Another layer to move it or lose it is breathwork. While technically not movement in the usual sense, deep breathing exercises are a form of internal motion that activates the parasympathetic nervous system, your body's natural calming mechanism. Teaching your child to breathe deeply when they're upset is like giving them a built-in pause button for emotional storms. You can make it fun and relatable. For example, smell the flower, blow out the candle, a breath in and breath out visualization, let's be balloons, inhale and fill up, now exhale slowly and deflate. These playful techniques make emotional regulation accessible, engaging, and memorable for kids. To summarize, the move it or lose it strategy emphasizes that sometimes the fastest way to calm the brain is to activate the body. Movement isn't just good for physical health, it's a critical tool for emotional balance. Whether it's dancing, stretching, walking, or breathing deeply, helping your child move through their emotions can bring clarity, calmness, and connection. In those intense parenting moments when words fall flat, don't forget the power of movement. It might just be the bridge that reconnects your child to their calm, capable self and reconnects both of you to a more peaceful, connected relationship. Point 6. Use the right and left brain, helping kids integrate logic and emotion. A central theme in The Whole Brain Child is the importance of integration, making different parts of the brain work together harmoniously. One of the most essential integrations parents can foster is between the left brain, logical, literal, language-based, and the right brain, emotional, visual, holistic. The strategy "Use the right and left brain" helps children balance these two sides to respond to life with clarity, empathy, and understanding. When a child is upset, scared, or confused, it's often their right brain that takes control. They might cry, scream, or shut down. In that state, trying to calm them down using logic like saying, "There's nothing to be afraid of," or "Stop crying, you're fine," usually doesn't work. That's because the emotional storm of the right brain needs to be acknowledged and comforted before the logical left brain can engage. The strategy here is twofold. First, connect emotionally with the right brain and then redirect using the logic of the left brain. This approach creates a bridge between emotion and reason, helping the child feel seen, safe, and soothed. Let's break it down. Step 1. Connect with the right brain. Imagine your child comes home from school, angry and in tears, because a friend didn't let them play at recess. Instead of jumping into problem-solving mode with questions like, "Did you tell the teacher?" or "Why didn't you find someone else to play with?" first connect with their feelings. You might say, "That sounds really hurtful. You wanted to play and they left you out. That must have made you feel really sad." This right brain response, nurturing, empathetic, emotional, shows your child that their feelings are valid and understood. It creates a safe space for the child to express and process what they're experiencing. Often just hearing a parent name their emotions helps a child calm down. The brain shifts from chaos to clarity, and the emotional storm begins to settle. This is because naming emotions helps organize the right brain experience with the structure of the left brain, a process called "name it to tame it," also mentioned earlier in the book. Step 2. Redirect with the left brain. Once your child feels understood, they become more receptive to logic and reasoning. Now you can engage their left brain to help them make sense of the situation. You might say, sometimes people make mistakes. Or maybe they were having a bad day. What do you think you can do tomorrow? Would you like to try asking someone else to play or talk to your friend again? This logical reflection helps the child think through the problem, consider different outcomes, and plan a better response next time. It builds resilience and encourages problem-solving key left brain skills. Why this integration matters. Children who can integrate both hemispheres of the brain grow into adults who can balance feelings and logic in challenging moments. They learn that it's okay to feel sad or frustrated, and they also learn how to think through those feelings and make wise choices. This doesn't mean you should always explain away their emotions or try to fix everything. Sometimes, just sitting with your child and listening is enough. Other times, once they're calm, you can guide them to reflect and learn. In daily life, you can practice this integration by encouraging both storytelling and reflection. For example, when your child is upset, draw a picture of the event together and talk about what happened. Create a bedtime habit of sharing highs and lows of the day. This helps kids name emotions and reflect on their experiences. When reading books or watching shows, ask your child how the characters might feel, right brain, and what they might do next, left brain. As parents, we can model this too. If you're angry, you might say, I'm feeling really frustrated right now, and I need a few minutes to calm down. Then we'll talk. This shows your child how to acknowledge emotion and use logic to guide behavior. In summary, use the right and left brain teaches us to first tune into our child's emotions before guiding them with logic. This not only helps them feel seen and soothed, but also builds a strong foundation for emotional intelligence and thoughtful decision-making. By helping kids link their feeling and thinking brains, we give them tools to navigate life's challenges with balance and understanding, an essential part of raising emotionally healthy and mentally strong individuals. Point 7. Engage, don't enrage, appealing to the upstairs brain. One of the most powerful ideas in the whole brain child is that parents should learn to engage, not enrage, their child's brain, especially when the child is upset, defiant, or behaving badly. This principle is about helping children develop their upstairs brain, which is responsible for decision-making, impulse control, empathy, and self-awareness. But here's the key challenge. The upstairs brain is under construction in children and teens. It's not fully developed until the mid-20s. So expecting kids to always act rationally, patiently, or empathetically isn't realistic. However, what we can do is help them access their upstairs brain more often, especially during moments of emotional intensity. Let's understand the difference. When a child is in distress or conflict, the downstairs brain, the part focused on survival, fear, fight or flight, often takes control. If we as parents respond with yelling, threats or punishment, we further activate the downstairs brain. This enrages the child and leads to power struggles. On the other hand, if we engage the upstairs brain by remaining calm, showing empathy, and involving the child in thinking and problem solving, we help the child build the very skills they need to manage future situations better. So how do we engage instead of enrage? It starts with staying calm ourselves. When a child throws a tantrum, talks back, or refuses to cooperate, it's easy to react emotionally. But if we respond with anger or control, we invite a downstairs to downstairs battle, two reactive brains in conflict. Instead, we need to bring our upstairs brain to the situation, stay composed, understand the child's emotion, and guide them toward reasoning. For example, if your child refuses to do homework and yells, "I hate this, I'm not doing it," the natural reaction might be to yell back or issue a punishment. But that would likely make things worse. Instead, you might say, "I can see you're frustrated. Want to tell me what's bothering you, or let's take a few minutes and figure this out together." By acknowledging their feelings and inviting them into a solution, you're helping engage their upstairs brain, bringing them back to a place where they can think clearly. This doesn't mean you allow bad behavior. It means you set boundaries in a connected way. Here's another example. If your child hits their sibling, instead of shouting, "That's it, you're grounded," which only provokes resistance, try, "I saw you hit your sister. That's not okay. I want to hear what happened so we can figure this out." Now you're not ignoring the behavior, you're holding your child accountable, but you're also modeling how to manage conflict with emotional control and reflection. Why this matters long term. Each time you engage your child's upstairs brain, you're strengthening the neural pathways that allow them to make thoughtful decisions. Over time, they learn to pause before acting, to reflect on their choices, and to manage their impulses, all crucial life skills. You're also teaching them how to relate to others with empathy and self-regulation. When parents consistently engage instead of enrage, children grow up feeling understood and respected, and they develop stronger emotional intelligence. This strategy is especially powerful during discipline moments. Discipline should not be about punishment, but about teaching. The word discipline comes from the Latin disciplina, which means to teach. So the goal of discipline is to help children learn, not to scare or control them. When you engage the upstairs brain, you invite your child into a learning moment. You're saying, "You made a mistake and I'm here to help you understand it, take responsibility and grow from it." Even in small daily challenges, like resisting bedtime, whining at dinner, or refusing to share, you can pause and ask, "How can I engage my child's thinking brain instead of fueling their reactive brain?" In summary, the engage don't enrage strategy helps parents use calm, connection and collaboration to shape their child's brain development. It reminds us that discipline is most effective when it's not about control, but about teaching, guiding, and engaging. By doing this, we raise kids who are better able to manage their emotions, solve problems, and build meaningful relationships, all of which are essential for a fulfilling life. Point 8. Move it or lose it, using the body to calm the mind. One of the most surprising and practical insights from the whole brain child is the strategy called move it or lose it. This concept emphasizes how physical movement can help children regulate their emotions and regain mental balance. It's based on the neuroscience principle that the brain and body are deeply interconnected. What we do with our bodies influences how we feel and think. When a child is overwhelmed, anxious, angry, or emotionally flooded, it's often because their downstairs brain, which handles basic survival responses, is in control. In this reactive state, reasoning, problem solving, and communication functions of the upstairs brain are shut down. So instead of trying to force a child to talk it out or calm down with logic alone, sometimes the fastest and most effective way to help is to simply get them moving. Why movement helps? Movement activates different areas of the brain and stimulates the production of neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, natural mood regulators. It also helps release built-up energy and tension, making it easier for a child to shift from a reactive state to a calm and cooperative one. Think about your own experience. After a brisk walk, a jog, dancing or stretching, you often feel more clear-headed and emotionally balanced. The same principle applies to children. Movement doesn't just burn off excess energy, it helps reboot the brain. Examples in real life. Let's say your child is having a meltdown after school, maybe because they're tired, hungry, or had a rough day. Instead of immediately trying to talk them through it, try something physical. Invite them to jump on a trampoline. Suggest a silly dance break in the living room. Play a short game of tag or hopscotch. Let them run up and down the hallway or do jumping jacks. Even a few minutes of movement can create a noticeable shift in your child's mood. Once their body is engaged and some emotional energy is released, they are more likely to be open to connection, reasoning, and reflection. Movement as a proactive tool. This strategy isn't just for emotional emergencies. You can use it proactively to help your child transition between activities, prepare for challenges, or release built-up stress. For example, before starting homework, do 5 minutes of stretching or a short dance video. After screen time, take a short walk together. In the morning, do a quick movement routine to energize the brain for the day. Teachers and schools are also recognizing the power of movement. Short brain breaks that involve physical activity are being used in classrooms to improve focus, reduce behavioral issues, and boost learning. The brain simply works better when the body is active. Movement is not a punishment. It's important to understand that movement should not be used as a form of discipline or control, like forcing a child to do push-ups as punishment. The goal isn't to exhaust them or burn out the bad behavior. The goal is to use movement as a tool to restore emotional balance and cognitive clarity. In some cases, you can even empower your child to recognize when they need movement. You might say, "You seem really frustrated, want to go outside and run around for a bit?" Over time, they may learn to ask for a break themselves, a sign of growing emotional awareness. Movement helps adults too. This strategy isn't just for kids. As parents, when we feel overwhelmed or stuck in our own emotional loops, getting up and moving, going for a walk, stretching, or even doing household chores can help us regulate and reset, making us more present and responsive to our children. In summary, the move it or lose it strategy from the whole brain child reminds us that the mind and body are not separate. When emotions run high and logic shuts down, physical movement can help shift the brain back into balance, creating the space for connection, learning, and problem solving. By encouraging healthy movement habits, we give children a lifelong tool for managing stress, calming anxiety, and staying emotionally regulated. And best of all, It's fun, easy and natural for kids. Point 9. SIFT, helping kids explore what's going on inside. Another powerful tool introduced in the Whole Brain Child is the concept of SIFT, which stands for sensations, images, feelings and thoughts. This technique is designed to help children and adults become more aware of what's happening inside their minds. When kids are able to identify and name their internal experiences, they're much better equipped to manage emotions, understand themselves, and respond to challenges in a healthy way. Let's break down what each part of SIFT stands for. 1. Sensations. These are the physical feelings in the body, like a fluttery stomach, a pounding heart, sweaty palms, or tense muscles. Kids often experience physical signals first during emotional events, but may not know how to interpret them. For instance, a child may say, "My tummy hurts," when they're actually feeling anxious. Helping them tune into and name these body signals builds self-awareness. Example: when you started your math test, did your hands feel cold or shaky? This helps them notice that their body is giving them clues about their emotions. 2. Images. These are the mental pictures or memories that pop into the mind. Sometimes, kids are affected by a memory or scary image and don't know how to talk about it. By exploring these mental pictures, they can understand how past experiences are influencing their current state. Example: a child might feel upset but not know why. When guided through SIFT, they might recall a recent dream or a memory of someone yelling that made them feel unsafe. Recognizing this image helps them connect the dots. 3. Feelings. These are the emotions like sadness, anger, excitement, jealousy or fear. While feelings may seem obvious, many children don't have the vocabulary or practice to name them. They just feel bad or mad. Helping kids label their feelings with accurate words gives them power over those emotions. Example: instead of saying "I'm just angry," they might learn to say, "I'm feeling left out because my friends played without me." That's a much deeper level of understanding, and it opens the door to empathy and conversation. 4. Thoughts. These are the ideas or beliefs running through a child's mind like "I'm not good at this," "nobody likes me," or "I have to be perfect." Thoughts are powerful because they shape how we feel and act. Kids often absorb negative thoughts without questioning them, which can affect self-esteem. By encouraging children to notice and share their thoughts, we help them reflect and evaluate whether those thoughts are accurate or helpful. How to use SIFT. Parents can use the SIFT model during calm moments or after emotional events. It's as simple as asking, "What sensations are you feeling in your body right now? Are there any pictures or memories in your head that are bothering you? What emotions are you feeling? What thoughts are you thinking about yourself or the situation?" You don't have to go through all 4 every time. The key is to create a safe, non-judgmental space where your child can explore what's happening inside them. The goal is not to fix the feelings, but to help your child understand them. This practice builds what the authors call mindsight, a person's ability to observe their own mind. Mindsight leads to emotional intelligence, stronger relationships, and healthier coping strategies. Why SIFT matters. Most of us go through life reacting to situations without fully understanding the internal experiences driving our behavior. By teaching kids to sift through their minds, we give them a lifelong tool to navigate challenges, build resilience, and foster inner calm. Children who learn SIFT are more emotionally aware, less likely to act out when upset, better communicators, more compassionate and understanding of others. And perhaps most importantly, they feel seen and understood, both by themselves and the people who care for them. Point 10. Exercise mindsight, teaching kids to understand their own minds. The final strategy from the Whole Brain Child centers around developing what the authors call mindsight. Mindsight is the ability to see and understand your own mind and the minds of others. It's like a form of mental and emotional self-awareness, understanding your thoughts, feelings, memories, and bodily sensations, and how they influence your actions. It also involves empathy, being able to see things from someone else's perspective. This might sound like a complex idea, but even very young children can begin developing mindsight when we guide them with the right tools and language. In fact, this one ability can transform the way children handle conflict, understand relationships, and develop a strong sense of self. Why mindsight matters. When children have mindsight, they can pause and think before reacting, understand and name what they're feeling, make sense of why others behave the way they do, communicate more clearly, Show compassion and empathy. Reflect on their experiences and grow from them. Without mindsight, children often feel confused by their own emotions. They might lash out when overwhelmed or withdraw when sad, not fully understanding what's going on inside. Mindsight allows them to observe their emotions without being consumed by them, which helps them regulate behavior, build confidence, and develop emotional resilience. How to teach mindsight? You don't need to be a neuroscientist or therapist to teach mindsight. It's something you can integrate into everyday conversations and routines. Here are a few effective ways. 1. Name emotions out loud. When your child is upset or excited, name what they might be feeling. For example, you're really frustrated because the block tower fell down. You look proud of your drawing. By labeling emotions, you're helping your child build an emotional vocabulary and learn to identify and talk about what's happening inside them. 2. Use stories and reflections. Reflect with your child after emotional events. For example, earlier, you were really upset when your toy broke. What do you think was going on inside you? When your friend didn't share, how did that make you feel? These conversations invite them to explore their internal experience, which builds mindsight over time. 3. Model it yourself. Show your own process of mindsight in everyday moments. I'm feeling a little nervous about this meeting today, but I'm reminding myself I've prepared well. When I spilled the coffee, I got frustrated. I needed to take a deep breath and reset. When children see you using mindsight, they learn by example. 4. Use tools like journaling or drawing. Some kids might prefer expressing what's going on inside them through art or writing. You can invite them to draw how they feel, or write about a moment that was challenging. These tools help make the invisible thoughts and feelings visible, which is a core goal of Mindsight, integrating Mindsight into daily life. Mindsight isn't a one-time lesson. It's a skill that grows with practice. Here are a few small ways to encourage it regularly. At bedtime, ask, what was something that made you feel happy, sad, confused today? During play, notice how toys or characters express feelings and talk about it. When watching movies or reading books, ask, how do you think that character feels? Why? Encourage siblings to reflect during conflicts. How do you think your brother felt when that happened? These moments help children practice putting themselves in others' shoes while also developing insight into their own emotions. The long-term benefits. Children who develop strong mindsight skills grow up to be emotionally intelligent, empathetic, self-aware, better at handling stress and conflict, more resilient and reflective. Ultimately, Mindsight equips children to navigate the ups and downs of life with greater calm, clarity, and compassion. It empowers them to know themselves, connect meaningfully with others, and make choices that reflect emotional maturity.